My Fair Planet *******, My Fair Planet by Evelyn E. Smith, illustrated by Dylan. Transcriber's note: this text was produced from Galaxy Science Fiction, March 1958. Extensive research did not uncover any evidence that the U.S. copyright on this publication was renewed. All the world's a stage, so there was room even for this bad actor, only he intended to direct it. As Paul Lamberquin was clambering up the stairs of his rooming house, he met a man whose face was all wrong. "Good evening," Paul said politely, and was about to continue on his way when the man stopped him. "You are the first person I have encountered in this place who has not shuddered at the sight of me," he said in a toneless voice with an accent that was outside the standard repertoire. "Am I?" Paul asked, bringing himself back from one of the roseate dreams with which he kept himself insulated from a not-too-kind reality. "I dare say that's because I'm a bit nearsighted." He peered vaguely at the stranger. Then he recoiled. "What is incorrect about me, then?" the stranger demanded. "Do I not have two eyes, one nose and one mouth, the identical as other people?" Paul studied the other man. "Yes, but somehow they seem to be put together all wrong. Not that you can help it, of course," he added apologetically, for, when he thought of it, he hated to hurt people's feelings. "Yes, I can, for, of a truth, 'twas I who put myself together." "What did I do amiss?" Paul looked consideringly at him. "I can't quite put my finger on it, but there are certain subtle nuances you just don't seem to have caught. If you want my professional advice, you'll model yourself directly on some real person until you've got the knack of improvisation. Like unto this." The stranger's outline shimmered and blurred into an amorphous cloud, which then coalesced into the shape of a tall, beautiful young man with the face of an ingenious demon. "Behold, is that superior?" "Oh, far superior." Paul reached up to adjust a stray lock of hair, then realized he was not looking into a mirror. "Trouble is, well, I'd rather you chose someone else to model yourself on. You see, in my profession, it's important to look as unique as possible, helps people remember you. I'm an actor, you know. Currently I happen to be at liberty, but the year before last, well, whom should I appear like? Should I perhaps pick some fine upstanding figure from your public prints to emulate? Like your president, perhaps?" "I hardly think so. It wouldn't do to model yourself on someone well known, or even someone obscure whom you might just happen to run into someday." Being a kind-hearted young man, Paul added, "Come up to my room. I have some British film magazines and there are lots of relatively obscure English actors who are very decent-looking chaps." So they climbed up to Paul's hot little room under the eaves and, after leafing through several magazines, Paul chose one Ivo Darcy as a likely candidate. Whereupon the stranger deliquesced and reformed into the personable simulacrum of young Mr. Darcy. "That's quite a trick," Paul observed as it finally got through to him what the other had done. "It would come in handy in the profession, for character parts, you know. I fear you would never be able to acquisition it, the stranger said, surveying his new self in the mirror complacently. It is not a trick but a racial ableness. You see, I feel I can trust you. Of course I'm not really a character actor, I'm a leading man. But I believe one should be versatile, because there are times when a really good character part comes along. I am not a human being. I am a native of the fifth planet circulating around the star you call Sirius, and we Sirians have the ableness to change ourselves into the apparition of any other livid form. I thought that might be a Near Eastern accent. Paul exclaimed, diverted. Is Lebanese anything like it? Because I understand there's a really juicy part coming up in, I said Syrian, not Syrian. I do not come from Minor Asia but from outer space, from an otherwhere solar system. I am an outworlder, an extraterrestrial. I hope you had a nice trip, Paul said politely. From Sirius, did you say? What's the state of the theater there? In its infanticide, the stranger told him, but, let's face it, Paul muttered bitterly, it's in its infancy here, too. No overall planning. No appreciation of the fact that all the components that go to make up a production should be a continuing totality, instead of a tenuous coalition of separate forces which disintegrate. You, I comprehend, are disemployed at current. You won't find that situation in Russia. Paul went on, pleased to discover a sympathetic audience in this intelligent foreigner. Mind you, he added quickly, I disapprove entirely of their politics. In fact, I disapprove of all politics. But when it comes to the theater, in many respects the Russians like to make a proposal to our mutual advantage. You wouldn't find an actor there playing a lead role one season and then not be able to get any parts except summer stock and odd bits for the next 2 years. All right, so the show I had the lead in folded after 2 weeks, but the critics all raved about my performance. It was the play that stank. Will you terminate the monologue and hearken unto me? The alien shouted. Paul stopped talking. His feelings were hurt. He had thought Ivo liked him, now he saw all the Outworlder wanted to do was talk about his own problems. I desire to extend to you a position, said Ivo. I can't take a regular job, Paul said sulkily. I have to be available for interviews. Fellow I knew took a job in a store and, when he was called to read for a part, he couldn't get away. The fellow who did get that part became a big star, and maybe the other fellow could have been a star, too. But now all he is a lousy chairman of the board of some department store chain. This work can be undergone at your convention between readings and interviews, whenever you have the timing. I shall pay you beautifully, being abundant with USA currency. I want you to teach me how to act. Teach you how to act, Paul repeated, rather intrigued. Well, I'm not a dramatic coach, you know, however, I do happen to have some ideas on the subject. I feel that most acting teachers nowadays fail to give their students a really thorough grounding in all aspects of the dramatic art. All they talk about is method, method, method. But what about technique? I have observed your species with great diligence, and I thought I had acquisitioned your habits and speakings to perfectness. But I fear that, like my initial face, I have got them awry. I want you to teach me to act like a human being, to talk like a human being, to think like a human being. Paul's attention was really caught. Well, that is a challenge. I don't suppose Stanislavski ever had to teach an extraterrestrial, or even Strasbourg. Then we are in accordance, Ivo said. You will instruction me. He essayed a smile. Paul shuddered. Very well, he said. We'll start now. And I think the first thing we'd better start with is lessons in smiling. Ivo proved to be a quick study. He not only learned to smile, but to frown and to express surprise, pleasure, horror, whatever the occasion demanded. He learned the knack of counterfeiting humanity with such skill that Paul was moved to remark one afternoon when they were leaving Brooks Brothers after a fitting, "Sometimes you seem even more human than I do, Ivo. I wish you'd watch out for that tendency to rant, though. You're supposed to speak, not make speeches." I try not to, Ivo said, but I keep getting carried away by enthusiasm. Apparently I have a real flair for teaching, Paul went on as, expertly camouflaged by Brooks, the two young men melted into the dense charcoal-gray underbrush of Madison Avenue. I seem to be even more versatile than I thought. Perhaps I have been, well, not wasting but limiting my talents. That may be because your talents have not been sufficiently appreciated, his star pupil suggested, or given enough scope. Ivo was so perceptive. As a matter of fact, Paul agreed, it has often seemed to me that if some really gifted individual, equally adept at acting, directing, producing, playwriting, teaching, etc., were to undertake a thorough synthesis of the theatre, but that would cost money, he interrupted himself, and who would underwrite such a project? Certainly not the government of the United States. He gave a bitter laugh. Perhaps, under a new regime, conditions might be more favorable for the artist. Shush. Paul looked nervously over his shoulder. There are senators everywhere. Besides, I never said things were good in Russia, just better, for the actor, that is. Of course the plays are atrocious propaganda. I was not referring to another human regime. The human being is, at best, save for certain choice spirits, unsympathetic to the arts. We outworlders have a far greater respect for things of the mind. Paul opened his mouth. Ivo continued without giving him a chance to speak. No doubt you have often wondered just what I am doing here on Earth. The question had never crossed Paul's mind. Feeling vaguely guilty, he murmured, "Some people have funny ideas of where to go for a vacation." "I am here on business," Ivo told him. "The situation on Sirius is serious. You know, that's catchy." "The situation on Sirius is serious," Paul repeated, tapping his foot. "I've often thought of trying my hand at a musical we have had a grave population problem for the last couple of centuries. Hence our government has sent out scouts to look for other planets with similar atmosphere, climate, gravity and so on, where we can ship our excess population. So far, we have found very few. When Paul's attention was focused, he could be as quick as anybody to put 2 and 2 together. But Earth is already occupied. In fact, when I was in school, I heard something about our having a population problem ourselves. The other planets we already took over were in a similar state, Ivo explained. We managed to surmount that difficulty. How? Paul asked, though he already suspected the answer. Oh, we didn't dispose of all of the inhabitants. We merely weeded out the undesirables, who, by fortunate chance, happened to be in the majority, and achieved a happy and peaceful coexistence with the rest. But, look, Paul protested. I mean to say, for instance, Ivo said suavely, take the vast body of people who watch television and who have never seen a legitimate play in their lives and, indeed, rarely go to the motion pictures. Surely they are expendable. Well, yes, of course. But even among them there might be, say, a playwright's mother. One of the first measures our regime would take would be to establish a vast network of community theaters throughout the world. And you, Paul, would receive first choice of starring roles. Now wait a minute. Paul cried hotly. He seldom allowed himself to lose his temper, but when he did, he got angry. I pride myself that I've gotten this far wholly on my own merits. I don't believe in using influence to, but, my dear fellow, all I meant was that, with an intelligently coordinated theater and an intellectually adult audience, your abilities would be recognized automatically. Oh, said Paul. He was not unaware that he was being flattered, but it was so seldom that anyone bothered to pay him any attention when he was not playing a role that it was difficult not to succumb. Are you figuring on taking over the planet single-handed? He asked curiously. Heavens, no. Talented as I am, there are limits. I don't do the dirty work myself. I just conduct the preliminary investigation to determine how powerful the local defenses are. We have hydrogen bombs, Paul said, trying to remember details of a newspaper article he had once read in a producer's anteroom, and plutonium bombs and, I know about all those. Ivo smiled expertly. My job is checking to make sure you don't have anything really dangerous. All that night, Paul wrestled with his conscience. He knew he shouldn't just let Ivo go on. Yet what else could he do? Go to the proper authorities. But which authorities were the proper ones? And even if he found them, who would believe an actor offstage, delivering such improbable lines? He would either be laughed at or accused of being part of a subversive plot. It might result in a lot of bad publicity which could ruin his career. So Paul did nothing about Ivo. He went back to the usual rounds of agents' and producers' offices, and the knowledge of why Ivo was on Earth got pushed farther into the back of his mind as he trudged from interview to reading to interview. It was an exceptionally hot October, the kind of weather when sometimes he almost lost his faith and began to wonder why he was batting his head against a stone wall, why he didn't get a job in a department store somewhere or teaching school. And then he thought of the applause, the curtain calls, the dream of someday seeing his name in lights above the title of the play, and he knew he would never give up. Quitting the theater would be like committing suicide, for off the stage he was alive only technically. He was good, he knew he was good, so someday, he assured himself, he was bound to get his big break. Toward the end of that month, it came. After the maximum 3 readings, between which his hopes alternately waxed and waned, he was cast as the male lead in The Holiday Tree. The producers were more interested, they said, in getting someone who fitted the role of Eric Everett than in a big name, especially since the female star preferred to have her luster undimmed by competition. Rehearsals took up so much of his time that he saw very little of Ivo for the next 5 weeks, but by then Ivo didn't need him anymore. Actually, they were no longer teacher and pupil now but companions, drawn together by the fact that they both belonged to different worlds from the one in which they were living. Insofar as he could like anyone who existed outside of his imagination, Paul had grown rather fond of Ivo. And he rather thought Ivo liked him, too, but, because he couldn't ever be quite sure of ordinary people's reactions toward him, how could he be sure of an outworlder's? Ivo came around to rehearsals sometimes, but naturally it would be boring for him, since he wasn't in the profession, and, after a while, he didn't come around very often. At first, Paul felt a twinge of guilt, then he remembered that he need not worry. Ivo had his own work. The whole Holiday Tree troupe went out of town for the tryouts, and Paul didn't see Ivo at all for 6 weeks. Busy, happy weeks they were, for the play was a smash hit from the start. It played to packed houses in New Haven and Boston, and the box office in New York was sold out for months in advance before they even opened. Must be kinda fun, acting, Ivo told Paul the morning after the New York opening, as Paul weltered contentedly on his bed. He had the best room in the house now, amid a pile of rave notices. At long last, he had arrived. Everybody loved him. He was a success. And now that he had read the reviews and they were all favorable, he could pay attention to the strange things that had happened to his friend. Raising himself up on an elbow, Paul cried, "Ivo, you're mumbling. After all I taught you about articulation. I got tea hanging round with this here bunch of actors while we were gone," Ivo said. "They say mumbling's the coming thing. Sides, why kept yapping that I declaimed, so, but you don't have to go to the opposite extreme and, Ivo." Incredulously, Paul took in the full details of the other's appearance. "What happened to your Brooks Brothers suits?" "Hung 'em in a closet," Ivo replied, looking abashed. "I did wear one last night," though he went on defensively. "Wouldn't come dressed like this to Y opening, but all the other fellas wear blue jeans and leather jackets. I mean, hell, I gotta conform more than anybody. You know that, Paul. And Paul sat bolt upright. This was the supreme outrage. You've changed yourself. You've gotten younger. This is an age of youth, Ivo mumbled. And I figured I was bout ready for improvisation, like you said. Look, Ivo, if you really want to go on the stage, hell, I don't wanna be no actor. Ivo protested, far too vehemently. You know damn well I'm a spy, scouting round to see if I have any secret defenses before I make 'em report. I don't feel I'm giving away any government secrets, Paul said, when I tell you that the bastions of our defenses are not erected at the actor's studio. Listen, pal, you lemme spy the way I wanna and I'll leisure act the way you wanna. Paul was disturbed by this change in Ivo because, although he had always tried to steer clear of social involvement, he could not help feeling that the young alien had become in a measure his responsibility, particularly now that he was a teenager. Paul would even have worried about Ivo, if there hadn't been so many other things to occupy his mind. First of all, the producers of The Holiday Tree could not resist the pressure of an adoring public. Although the original star sulked, 3 months after the play had opened in New York, Paul's name went up in lights next to hers, over the title of the play. He was a star. That was good. But then there was Gregory. And that was bad. Gregory was Paul's understudy, a handsome, sullen youth who had, on numerous occasions, been heard to utter words to the effect of, "It's the part that's so good, not him." If I had the chance to play Eric Everett just once, they'd give Lamba Quinn back to the Indians. Sometimes he had said the words in Paul's hearing. Sometimes the remarks had been lovingly passed on by fellow members of the cast who felt that Paul ought to know. "I don't like that, Gregory," Paul told Ivo one Monday evening as they were enjoying a quiet smoke together, for there was no performance that night. "He used to be a juvenile delinquent. Got sent to one of those reform schools where they use acting as therapy, and it turned out to be his materia. But you never know when that kind'll hear the call of the wild again." "Ah, he's a good kid," Ivo said. "He just never had a chance. Trouble is, I'm afraid he's going to make himself a chance, that is." "Ah," retorted Ivo, with prideful inarticulateness. However, when at 6:30 that Friday, Paul fell over a wire stretched between the jambs of the doorway leading to his private bathroom and broke a leg, even Ivo was forced to admit that this did not look like an accident. "Ivo," Paul wailed when the doctor had left, "what am I going to do? I refuse to let Gregory go on in my place tonight." "Why gonna have to?" Ivo said, shifting his gum to the other side of his mouth. "He's why unna study. But the doctor said it would be weeks before I can get around again. Either Gregory'll take over the part completely with his interpretation and I'll be left out in the cold, or more likely, he'll louse up the play and it'll fold before I'm on my feet. Why gotta have more confidence in myself, kid? The public ain't gonna forget ya in a few weeks." But Paul knew far better than the idealistic Ivo how fickle the public can be. However, he chose an argument that would appeal to the boy. "Don't forget, he booby-trapped me. Certainly looks like it," Ivo was forced to concede. "But what you gonna do? Why can't he prove it? Sides, the curtain's gonna give up in a little over an hour." Paul gripped Ivo's sinewy wrist. "Ivo, you've got to go on for me. Why got rocks in my head or somepin'?" Ivo demanded, trying not to look pleased. "I ain't got an equity card, and even if I did, he's why I'm study." "No, you don't understand. I don't want you to go on as Ivo Darcy playing Eric Everett. I want you to go on as Paul Lamberquin playing Eric Everett. You can do it, Ivo." "Good Lord, so I can," Ivo whispered, temporarily neglecting to mumble. "I'd almost forgotten. You know my lines, too. You've cued me in my part often enough." Ivo rubbed his hand over his forehead. "Yeah, I guess I do." "Ivo," Paul beseeched him, "I thought we were pals. I don't want to ask any favors, but I helped you out when you were in trouble. I always figured I could rely on you. I never thought you'd let me down. And I won't." Ivo gripped Paul's hand. "I'll go on tonight and play at part like it ain't never been played before. No. Play it the way I played it. You're supposed to be me, Ivo. Forget Strasbourg, go back to Stanislavski." "Okay, pal," Ivo said. "Will do. And promise me one thing, Ivo. Promise me you won't mumble." Ivo winced. "Okay, but you're the only one I'd do it for." Slowly, he began to shimmer. Paul held his breath. Maybe Ivo had forgotten how to transmute himself. But technique triumphed over method. Ivo Darcy gradually coalesced into the semblance of Paul Lamberquin. The show would go on. "Well, how was everything?" Paul asked anxiously when Ivo came into his room shortly after midnight. "Pretty good," Ivo said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "Gregory was extremely surprised to see me, asked me half a dozen times how I was feeling." Ivo was not only articulating, Paul was gratified to notice, he was enunciating. "But the show, how did that go? Did anyone suspect you were a ringer?" "No," Ivo said slowly. "No, I don't think so. I got 12 curtain calls," he added, staring straight ahead of him with a dreamy smile. 12. Friday nights, the audience is always enthusiastic. Then Paul swallowed hard and said, "Besides, I'm sure you were great in the role." But Ivo didn't seem to hear him. Ivo was still wrapped in his golden days. "Just before the curtain went up, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. I began to feel all quivery inside, the way I do before I change. Butterflies in the stomach is the professional term." Paul nodded wisely. "A really good actor gets them before every performance. No matter how many times I play a role, there's that minute when the house lights start to dim when I'm in an absolute panic, and then the curtain went up and I was all right. I was fine. I was Paul Lamberquin. I was Eric Everett. I was everything. Ivo, Paul said, clapping him on the shoulder. You're a born trooper. Yes, Ivo murmured, I'm beginning to think so myself. For the next 4 weeks, Paul Lamberquin lurked in his room while Ivo Darcy played Paul Lamberquin playing Eric Everett. It's terrific of you to take all this time away from your duties, old chap, Paul said to Ivo one day between the matinee and the evening performances. I really do appreciate it. Although I suppose you've managed to squeeze some of them in. I never see you on non-matinee afternoons. Duties? Ivo repeated vacantly. Yes, of course, my duties. Let me give you some professional advice, though. Be more careful when you take off your makeup. There's still some grease paint in the roots of your hair. Sloppy of me, Ivo agreed, getting to work with a towel. I can't understand why you bother to put on the stuff at all, Paul grinned, when all you need to do is just change a little more. I know. Ivo rubbed his temples vigorously. I suppose I just like the smell of the stuff. Ivo, Paul laughed. There's no use trying to kid me, you are stage-struck. I'm sure I have enough pull now to get you a bit part somewhere, when I'm up and around again, and then you can get yourself an equity card. Maybe, he added amusedly, I can even have you replace Gregory as my understudy. Later, in retrospect, Paul thought perhaps there had been a curious expression in Ivo's eyes, but right then he'd had no inkling that anything untoward was up. He did not find out what had been at the back of Ivo's mind until the Sunday before the Tuesday on which he was planning to resume his role. Lord, it's going to be good to feel that stage under my feet again, he said as he went through a series of complicated limbering up exercises of his own devisement, which he had sometimes thought of publishing as the Lamberquin Time and Motion Studies. It seemed unfair to keep them from other actors. Ivo turned around from the mirror in which he had been contemplating their mutual beauty. Paul, he said quietly, you're never going to feel that stage under your feet again. Paul sat on the floor and stared at him. You see, Paul, Ivo said, I am Paul Lamberquin now. I am more Paul Lamberquin than I was, whoever I was on my native planet. I am more Paul Lamberquin than you ever were. You learned the part superficially, Paul, but I really feel it. It's not a part, Paul said querulously. It's me. I've always been Paul Lamberquin. How can you be sure of that? You've had so many identities, why should this be the true one? No, you only think you're Paul Lamberquin. I know I am. Damn it, Paul said, that's the identity in which I've taken out equity membership. And be reasonable, Ivo, there can't be two Paul Lamberquins. Ivo smiled sadly. No, Paul, you're right. There can't. Of course, Paul had known all along that Ivo was not a human being. It was only now, however, that full realization came to him of what a ruthless alien monster the other was, existing only to gratify his own purposes, unaware that others had a right to exist. Are you going to dispose of me, then? Paul asked faintly. To dispose of you, yes, Paul. But not to kill you. My kind has killed enough, conquered enough. We have no real population problem. That was just an excuse we made to salve our own consciences. You have consciences, do you? Paul's face twisted in a sneer that he himself sensed right away was overly melodramatic and utterly unconvincing. Somehow, he could never be really genuine offstage. Ivo made a sweeping gesture. Don't be bitter, Paul. Of course we do. All intelligent life forms do. It's one of the penalties of sentience. For a moment, Paul forgot himself. Watch it, Ivo. You're beginning to ham up your lines. We can institute birth control, Ivo went on, his manner subdued. We can build taller buildings. Oh, there are many ways we can cope with the population increase. That's not the problem. The problem is how to divert our creative energies from destruction to construction. And I think I have solved it. How will your people know you have? Paul asked cunningly, since you say you're not going back. I am not going back to Sirius, Paul, you are. It is you who are going to teach my people the art of peace to replace the art of war. Paul felt himself turn what was probably a very effective white. But I can't even speak the language. You will learn the language during the journey. I spent those afternoons I was away making a set of Syrian in Ajiffy records for you. Syrian's a beautiful language, Paul, much more expressive than any of your Earth languages. You'll like it. I'm sure I shall, but, Paul, you are going to bring my people the outlet for self-expression they have always needed. You see, I lied to you. The theater on Sirius is not in its infancy, it has never been conceived. If it had been, we would never have become what we are today. Can you imagine, a race like mine, so superbly fitted to practice the dramatic art, remaining in blind ignorance that such an art exists? It does seem a terrible waste, Paul had to agree, although he could not be truly sympathetic just then. But I am hardly equipped. Who is better equipped than you to meet this mighty challenge? Can't you see that at long last you will be able to achieve your great synthesis of the theatrical arts, as producer, teacher, director, actor, playwright, whatever you will, working with a cast of individuals who can assume any shape or form, who have no preconceived notions of what can be done and what cannot? Oh, Paul, what a glorious opportunity awaits you on Sirius V. How I envy you. Then why don't you do it yourself? Paul asked. Ivo smiled sadly again. Unfortunately, I do not have your manifold abilities. All I can do is act. Superbly, of course, but that's all. I don't have the capacity to build a living theater from scratch. You do. I have talent, Paul, but you have genius. It is a temptation, Paul admitted. But to leave my own world. Paul, Earth isn't your world. You carry yours along with you wherever you go. Your world exists in the mind and heart, not in reality. In any real situation, you're just as uncomfortable on Earth as you would be on Sirius. Yes, but, think of it this way, Paul. You're not leaving your world. You're just leaving Earth to go on the road. It's a longer road, but look at what's waiting for you at the end of it. Yes, look, Paul said, reality very much to the fore in his mind and heart at that moment, death or vivisection. Paul, do you believe I'd do that to you? There were tears in Ivo's eyes. If he was acting, he was a great performer. I really am one hell of a good teacher, Paul thought, and with lots of raw material like Ivo to work with, I could. Could he really mean what he's saying? They won't harm you, Paul, because you will come to Sirius bearing a message from me. You will tell my people that Earth has a powerful defensive weapon and you have come to teach them its secret. And it's true, Paul. The theater is your world's most powerful weapon, its best defense against the universal enemy, reality. Ivo, Paul said, you really must check that tendency toward bombast. Especially with a purple speech like that, you've simply got to learn to underplay. You'll watch out for that when I'm gone, won't you? I will. Ivo's face lighted up. Oh, I will, Paul. I promise never to chew the scenery again. I won't so much as nibble on a prop. The next day, the two of them went up to Bear Mountain where Ivo's ship had been cached all those months. Ivo explained to Paul how the controls worked and showed him where the clean towels were. Pausing in the airlock, Paul looked back toward Manhattan. I'd dreamed so many years of seeing my name up in lights on Broadway, he murmured, and now, just when I made it, I'll keep it up there, Ivo vowed. I promise. And, meanwhile, you'll be building a new Broadway up there in the stars. Yes, Paul said dreamily, that is something to look forward to, isn't it? Fresh, enthusiastic audiences, performers untrammeled by tradition, a cooperative government, unlimited funds, why, there was a whole wonderful new world opening up before him. In another 10 years or so, Ivo was saying, Syrian actors will be coming to Earth in droves, making the native performers look sick. Paul smiled wisely. Now, Ivo, you know equity would never stand for that. Equity won't be able to help itself. Public pressure will surge upward in a mounting wave and, Ivo stopped. Sorry. I was ranting again, wasn't I? It's being out in the open air that does it. I need to be bounded by the four walls of a theater. That's a fallacy, Paul began. On the Greek stage, save that for the stars, fella, Ivo smiled. You've got to leave before it gets light. Then he wrung Paul's hand. Goodbye, kid, he said. You'll knock 'em dead on Sirius. Goodbye, Ivo. Paul returned the grip. Then he got inside and closed the airlock door behind him. He did hope Ivo would correct that tendency toward declamation. On the other hand, it was certainly better than mumbling. Paul put a Syrian in a jiffy record on the turntable, because he might as well start learning the language right away. Of course he'd have no one to talk to but himself for many months, but then, when all was said and done, he was his own favorite audience. He strapped himself into the acceleration couch and prepared for takeoff. Next week, Evelyn, he said to himself. Asterisk 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 end of the Project Gutenberg ebook My Fair Planet asterisk 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 updated editions will replace the previous one, the old editions will be renamed. Creating the works from print editions not protected by U.S. copyright law means that no one owns a United States copyright in these works, so the Foundation, and you, can copy and distribute it in the United States without permission and without paying copyright royalties. Special rules, set forth in the general terms of use part of this license, apply to copying and distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept and trademark. Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark, and may not be used if you charge for an ebook, except by following the terms of the trademark license, including paying royalties for use of the Project Gutenberg trademark. If you do not charge anything for copies of this ebook, complying with the trademark license is very easy. You may use this ebook for nearly any purpose such as creation of derivative works, reports, performances and research. Project Gutenberg ebooks may be modified and printed and given away. You may do practically anything in the United States with ebooks not protected by U.S. copyright law. Redistribution is subject to the trademark license, especially commercial redistribution. Start. Full license. The full Project Gutenberg license. Please read this before you distribute or use this work to protect the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting the free distribution of electronic works. By using or distributing this work, or any other work associated in any way with the phrase Project Gutenberg, you agree to comply with all the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license available with this file or online at www.gutenberg.org/license. Section 1. General Terms of Use and Redistributing Project Gutenberg Trademark Symbol Electronic Works 1.0. By reading or using any part of this Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work, you indicate that you have read, understand, agree to and accept all the terms of this license and intellectual property, trademark/copyright, agreement. If you do not agree to abide by all the terms of this agreement, you must cease using and return or destroy all copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in your possession. If you paid a fee for obtaining a copy of or access to a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work and you do not agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement, you may obtain a refund from the person or entity to whom you paid the fee as set forth in paragraph 1.e.8. 1.b Project Gutenberg is a registered trademark. It may only be used on or associated in any way with an electronic work by people who agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement. There are a few things that you can do with most Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works even without complying with the full terms of this agreement. See paragraph 1.c below. There are a lot of things you can do with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works if you follow the terms of this agreement and help preserve free future access to Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. See paragraph 1.e below. 1.c The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the Foundation or PGLAF, owns a compilation copyright in the collection of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Nearly all the individual works in the collection are in the public domain in the United States. If an individual work is unprotected by copyright law in the United States and you are located in the United States, we do not claim a right to prevent you from copying, distributing, performing, displaying or creating derivative works based on the work as long as all references to Project Gutenberg are removed. Of course, we hope that you will support the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol mission of promoting free access to electronic works by freely sharing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works in compliance with the terms of this agreement for keeping the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol name associated with the work. You can easily comply with the terms of this agreement by keeping this work in the same format with its attached full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license when you share it without charge with others. 1.d The copyright laws of the place where you are located also govern what you can do with this work. Copyright laws in most countries are in a constant state of change. If you are outside the United States, check the laws of your country in addition to the terms of this agreement before downloading, copying, displaying, performing, distributing or creating derivative works based on this work or any other Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. The Foundation makes no representations concerning the copyright status of any work in any country other than the United States. 1.e Unless you have removed all references to Project Gutenberg. 1.e.1 The following sentence, with active links to, or other immediate access to, the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license must appear prominently whenever any copy of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, any work on which the phrase Project Gutenberg appears, or with which the phrase Project Gutenberg is associated, is accessed, displayed, performed, viewed, copied or distributed. This ebook is for the use of anyone anywhere in the United States and most other parts of the world at no cost and with almost no restrictions whatsoever. You may copy it, give it away or reuse it under the terms of the Project Gutenberg license included with this ebook or online at www.gutenberg.org. If you are not located in the United States, you will have to check the laws of the country where you are located before using this ebook. 1.e.2 If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is derived from texts not protected by U.S. copyright law, does not contain a notice indicating that it is posted with permission of the copyright holder, the work can be copied and distributed to anyone in the United States without paying any fees or charges. If you are redistributing or providing access to a work with the phrase Project Gutenberg associated with or appearing on the work, you must comply either with the requirements of paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 or obtain permission for the use of the work and the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark as set forth in paragraphs 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.3. If an individual Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work is posted with the permission of the copyright holder, your use and distribution must comply with both paragraphs 1.e.1 through 1.e.7 and any additional terms imposed by the copyright holder. Additional terms will be linked to the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license for all works posted with the permission of the copyright holder found at the beginning of this work. 1.e.4. Do not unlink or detach or remove the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license terms from this work, or any files containing a part of this work or any other work associated with Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. 1.e.5. Do not copy, display, perform, distribute or redistribute this electronic work, or any part of this electronic work, without prominently displaying the sentence set forth in paragraph 1.e.1 with active links or immediate access to the full terms of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. 1.e.6. You may convert to and distribute this work in any binary, compressed, marked up, non-proprietary or proprietary form, including any word processing or hypertext form. However, if you provide access to or distribute copies of a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work in a format other than plain vanilla ASCII or other format used in the official version posted on the official Project Gutenberg trademark symbol website, www.gutenberg.org, you must, at no additional cost, fee or expense to the user, provide a copy, a means of exporting a copy, or a means of obtaining a copy upon request, of the work in its original plain vanilla ASCII or other form. Any alternate format must include the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license as specified in paragraph 1.e.1. 1.e.7. Do not charge a fee for access to, viewing, displaying, performing, copying or distributing any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works unless you comply with paragraph 1.e.8 or 1.e.9. 1.e.8. You may charge a reasonable fee for copies of or providing access to or distributing Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works provided that you pay a royalty fee of 20% of the gross profits you derive from the use of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works calculated using the method you already use to calculate your applicable taxes. The fee is owed to the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, but he has agreed to donate royalties under this paragraph to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Royalty payments must be paid within 60 days following each date on which you prepare, or are legally required to prepare, your periodic tax returns. Royalty payments should be clearly marked as such and sent to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation at the address specified in Section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. You provide a full refund of any money paid by a user who notifies you in writing, or by email, within 30 days of receipt that he does not agree to the terms of the full Project Gutenberg trademark symbol license. You must require such a user to return or destroy all copies of the works possessed in a physical medium and discontinue all use of and all access to other copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. You provide, in accordance with paragraph 1.f.3, a full refund of any money paid for a work or a replacement copy, if a defect in the electronic work is discovered and reported to you within 90 days of receipt of the work. You comply with all other terms of this agreement for free distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol works. 1.e.9. If you wish to charge a fee or distribute a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work or group of works on different terms than are set forth in this agreement, you must obtain permission in writing from the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the manager of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark. Contact the Foundation as set forth in Section 3 below. 1.f1.f.1. Project Gutenberg volunteers and employees expend considerable effort to identify, do copyright research on, transcribe and proofread works not protected by U.S. copyright law in creating the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection. Despite these efforts, Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, and the medium on which they may be stored, may contain defects such as, but not limited to, incomplete, inaccurate or corrupt data, transcription errors, a copyright or other intellectual property infringement, a defective or damaged disk or other medium, a computer virus, or computer codes that damage or cannot be read by your equipment. 1.f.2. Limited warranty, disclaimer of damages, except for the right of replacement or refund described in paragraph 1.f.3, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, the owner of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol trademark, and any other party distributing a Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic work under this agreement, disclaim all liability to you for damages, costs and expenses, including legal fees. You agree that you have no remedies for negligence, strict liability, breach of warranty or breach of contract except those provided in paragraph 1.f.3. You agree that the Foundation, the trademark owner, and any distributor under this agreement will not be liable to you for actual, direct, indirect, consequential, punitive or incidental damages even if you give notice of the possibility of such damage. 1.f.3. Limited right of replacement or refund, If you discover a defect in this electronic work within 90 days of receiving it, you can receive a refund of the money, if any, you paid for it by sending a written explanation to the person you received the work from. If you received the work on a physical medium, you must return the medium with your written explanation. The person or entity that provided you with the defective work may elect to provide a replacement copy in lieu of a refund. If you received the work electronically, the person or entity providing it to you may choose to give you a second opportunity to receive the work electronically in lieu of a refund. If the second copy is also defective, you may demand a refund in writing without further opportunities to fix the problem. 1.f.4 Except for the limited right of replacement or refund set forth in paragraph 1.f.3, this work is provided to you as is, with no other warranties of any kind, express or implied, including but not limited to warranties of merchantability or fitness for any purpose. 1.f.5 Some states do not allow disclaimers of certain implied warranties or the exclusion or limitation of certain types of damages. If any disclaimer or limitation set forth in this agreement violates the law of the state applicable to this agreement, the agreement shall be interpreted to make the maximum disclaimer or limitation permitted by the applicable state law. The invalidity or unenforceability of any provision of this agreement shall not void the remaining provisions. 1.f.6 Indemnity. You agree to indemnify and hold the foundation, the trademark owner, any agent or employee of the foundation, anyone providing copies of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works in accordance with this agreement, and any volunteers associated with the production, promotion and distribution of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works, harmless from all liability, costs and expenses, including legal fees, that arise directly or indirectly from any of the following which you do or cause to occur. A. Distribution of this or any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work. B. Alteration, modification, or additions or deletions to any Project Gutenberg trademark symbol work, and C. Any defect you cause. Section 2. Information about the mission of Project Gutenberg trademark symbol. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol is synonymous with the free distribution of electronic works in formats readable by the widest variety of computers, including obsolete, old, middle-aged and new computers. It exists because of the efforts of hundreds of volunteers and donations from people in all walks of life. Volunteers and financial support to provide volunteers with the assistance they need are critical to reaching Project Gutenberg trademark symbol's goals and ensuring that the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol collection will remain freely available for generations to come. In 2001, the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation was created to provide a secure and permanent future for Project Gutenberg trademark symbol and future generations. To learn more about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation and how your efforts and donations can help, see sections 3 and 4 and the Foundation information page at www.gutenberg.org. Section 3. Information about the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. The Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation is a non-profit 501(c)(3) educational corporation organized under the laws of the state of Mississippi and granted tax-exempt status by the Internal Revenue Service. The Foundation's IN or Federal Tax Identification Number is 64-6221541. Contributions to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation are tax-deductible to the full extent permitted by U.S. federal laws and your state's laws. The Foundation's business office is located at 809 North 1500 West, Salt Lake City, UT 84116, 801, 596-1887. Email contact links and up-to-date contact information can be found at the Foundation's website and official page at www.gutenberg.org/contact section 4. Information about donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol depends upon and cannot survive without widespread public support and donations to carry out its mission of increasing the number of public domain and licensed works that can be freely distributed in machine-readable form accessible by the widest array of equipment including outdated equipment. Many small donations, $1 to $5,000, are particularly important to maintaining tax-exempt status with the IRS. The Foundation is committed to complying with the laws regulating charities and charitable donations in all 50 states of the United States. Compliance requirements are not uniform and it takes a considerable effort, much paperwork and many fees to meet and keep up with these requirements. We do not solicit donations in locations where we have not received written confirmation of compliance. To send donations or determine the status of compliance for any particular state, visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. While we cannot and do not solicit contributions from states where we have not met the solicitation requirements, we know of no prohibition against accepting unsolicited donations from donors in such states who approach us with offers to donate. International donations are gratefully accepted, but we cannot make any statements concerning tax treatment of donations received from outside the United States. U.S. laws alone swamp our small staff. Please check the Project Gutenberg web pages for current donation methods and addresses. Donations are accepted in a number of other ways including checks, online payments and credit card donations. To donate, please visit www.gutenberg.org/donate. Section 5. General information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol electronic works. Professor Michael S. Hart was the originator of the Project Gutenberg trademark symbol concept of a library of electronic works that could be freely shared with anyone. For 40 years, he produced and distributed Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks with only a loose network of volunteer support. Project Gutenberg trademark symbol ebooks are often created from several printed editions, all of which are confirmed as not protected by copyright in the US unless a copyright notice is included. Thus, we do not necessarily keep ebooks in compliance with any particular paper edition. Most people start at our website, which has the main PG search facility, www.gutenberg.org. This website includes information about Project Gutenberg trademark symbol, including how to make donations to the Project Gutenberg Literary Archive Foundation, how to help produce our new ebooks, and how to subscribe to our email newsletter to hear about new ebooks.